welcome to this episode of the Blog Chronicles. I am your host, Matthew Loomis. This show is sponsored by BuildYourOwnBlog.net, the full-service destination for people who want to start their own WordPress blog and achieve long-term success. Visit BuildYourOwnBlog.net to start your new blog today. If a Content Marketing Hall of Fame actually existed, today's guest would already be a member. He is one of the most respected authorities on the topic of content marketing, also known as inbound marketing, and for good reason. In 2008, my guest was a co-owner of a swimming pool supply company, and the economic market crash of 2008 almost put him out of business. His brick-and-mortar store came close to going bankrupt. Thankfully, he was open to new ideas and decided to plunge headfirst into business blogging. He started a blog for his pool company, began using content marketing, and the rest, they say, is history. His pool company not only survived, it grew and expanded and became the #1 pool company on Google search results. Since then, today's guest has become a highly sought-after speaker and online business consultant. He gives trainings all over the world to corporations and entrepreneurs, and his latest book is now available, titled They Ask You Answer, A Revolutionary Approach to Inbound Sales, Content Marketing, and Today's Digital Entrepreneur, where he shares his content marketing secrets along with case studies and his own amazing personal story. That's what we're going to talk about today. He's known as the Sales Lion and was called a web marketing guru by the New York Times. Let's now get our chronicle on with Marcus Sheridan. Hi, Marcus. Welcome to the show.
Matt, it is a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much. Hopefully I'll say something of value to your wonderful listeners today, man.
I'm pretty confident that's going to happen. So today, Marcus, I'd like to talk to you about your new book, They Ask You Answer, A Revolutionary Approach to Inbound Sales, Content Marketing, and Today's Digital Consumer. The book explains your philosophy, your business philosophy, to internet marketing, and They Ask You Answer is the name that you have given this formula to online sales success. Now, this approach is practical, and you say any type of online business can use it to succeed. And you have seen They Ask You Answer work in your own career quite dramatically, and we will get into that in a moment. And you've also seen this formula work for other businesses. In fact, your book shares 4 case studies of how They Ask You Answer can bring in enormous success for any online business. First of all, Marcus, let's start with the formula They Ask You Answer. Basically, in a nutshell, so to speak, I think how you could describe it is you're saying that the key to online sales success is to address the customer's questions with helpful answers, and this will dramatically increase the sales results of any type of internet business. Marcus, is it really that simple?
Well, I think, simplistically speaking, yes, that's what it is. Now, it is a little bit deeper than that, though, okay? Because They Ask You Answer is an obsession with the way the buyer thinks, not just what they're asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, some buyers will say, I wish I could buy it this way.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, for years people would say, I wish I could send the shoes back if I didn't want them, which is a really simple thing. That's a want. And so in this case, Zappos could answer that question, and they could say, okay, we're going to give you free returns or not, like most retailers did. They just didn't. They didn't worry about it. And so because they were more focused on what the buyer wanted or how they wanted to buy, they were able to be really successful. You know what's funny, Matt, is a lot of the quote innovation that occurs today occurs when we change the way something is sold more than we change the thing itself.
Yeah, so I think it's important for people to understand why They Ask You Answer is a business philosophy that they could and probably should consider if they want to succeed today. Can you talk more about this massive buying shift that's taken place and how sales and marketing have blurred together to fundamentally transform the way we do business now.
Boy, they have changed. You know, we all know it. We all know it, but I mean, there's a lot of different studies out there about this. You know, one of the studies that I cite in the book is that 70% of the buying decision today is made on average before the buyer talks to the company. That was a B2B. That was a B2B study. And so, I mean, you got to look at it like this. Today, on average, 70% of the buying decisions made before they actually talk to a salesperson. And if we analyze that and we said, okay, what was that number, say, 15 years ago? Most people would probably guess 20 to 30%. So we're 20 to 30% 15 years ago. Today, we're at 70%. The question is for each and every one of us, what's it going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And what does that mean for sales? What does it mean for marketing? Well, we better recognize it, because this is one of those things that, you know, I don't celebrate it, Matt. You know what I mean? It's like, it just is. It's like the tide that's going to come up. It's going to come up. Can't fight it, can't resist it. It's just going to do what it does. What's funny about that, though, is, and I think this is the core of it. If we accept the trends for what they are, right? And we said, which department of your organization has a greater impact on the actual sale? Is it the sales department or the marketing department? Well, the trend says it's marketing. Notwithstanding, when a company is in financial trouble, the first department that gets laid off is almost always still marketing. And when a company's trying to grow its organization, the first department that gets hired is sales. So the question is why? And it's because we've been doing it forever, and we've always seen sales as revenue, marketing as expense, at least in terms of financial sheet. That's fundamentally flawed, because we've never been able to measure the efficacy and the ROI of marketing more than we can today. I mean, we can get true numbers, which you saw in the book, Matt. It's like chock full of that piece of content made that much money for the company.
Yeah. Well, yeah, very specific. Whereas, you know, through history with like television, radio ads, you couldn't do that.
No, man. We were as my friend would say, peeing in the wind, right?
Right.
Yeah, you just don't really know. You don't really know what's happening. And I was a pool guy for years. I still own a swimming pool company, obviously, but I did all the traditional forms of marketing. And I got to a point where I just said to myself, man, if I cannot measure it, I just simply don't want to do it. Now, I'm not saying everybody should follow that admonition, but we can measure so much.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize that.
Yeah, I know a lot of direct response copywriters like, you know, that fact that you can measure, you know, today versus in the past, which is, I think, translating for better sales copy online. Marcus, how does an online business begin using the they ask, you answer approach?
Well, I think it starts with obsessive listening, right? And there's a couple activities, two main activities, and of course this is in the book. First, and one of the most fruitful activities that you can do is you should say, what are the top at least seven reasons why somebody would not buy from us, okay? Top 7 reasons why somebody would not buy from you. This is assuming they know you exist, right? So why would somebody say to you, Matt, we like you, we like your company, but we've decided to go a different direction. And if I'm being honest, I've decided because you're too expensive, or, you know, I'm afraid you can't service our area, whatever it is, right? So write down the top 7 reasons why somebody would not do business with you. Now, once you have done that activity, and by the way, a lot of people struggle with that activity, which can only denote, Matt, that they've lost touch with their customer. But as soon as you do that, you say to yourself, okay, of these 7, how many have I addressed very well on my website already? And this is where they ask you answer starts. Because if you look at the companies that have changed the game, they take all the fears as to why somebody would not buy and they try to eliminate them before they even come into the, quote, sale situation, right? So, for example, CarMax did that. They changed the used car space. They said, set prices, no more haggling, set commissions for our salespeople. Let's offer a 5-day money-back guarantee so that they won't have buyer's remorse. Let's have an incredible inspection system with this CarMax quality certified system we have a Carfax vehicle history report as a standard. I mean, they did all these things so that consumers would not have the fear of buying a used car like they have for the last, I don't know, 75 years. And that's
Hmm.
how they became the largest retailer of used cars in our country. And so it starts with recognizing fear and then saying, have we addressed them? Is it possible that we address them? That's number one. Number two activity. And that is take every question that you've ever been asked and just start to brainstorm it. Write it down. Any question that somebody has asked you over the years that pertains to your business, write it down, do a brainstorm, and try to be as specific as possible. What are they thinking and how are they saying it? And if you do this, there's a very, very good chance you're off to the right start, because now you've got the foundation of the content you should be producing or the changes that you need to be making in order to eliminate all the fears. Because if fears don't exist, the only emotion that's left is trust. And that is ultimately the goal of what we're talking about. And that's certainly the goal of the Ask You Answer.
Yeah, Marcus, what you just described, you essentially did that back in 2008. I'd like to get into your story because it's so compelling. Let's start at 2001. Can you just give us a story, like a Reader's Digest version of your beginnings with River Pool and Spa, and what happened in 2008, and what you did to save the business?
Yeah. So here's the very condensed version of the River Pool story. We started in 2001.
Hmm.
And very small company, just trying to survive. And we had our ups and downs up until about 2008, right? So we made it all the way to that point, but by 2008 the market collapsed, and pool companies all over the country were in huge trouble because nobody at this point could. Okay, well, so many people couldn't get a loan. Many people didn't have any value in their home, and most people buy pools by getting a second mortgage or a home equity line. So we were in huge trouble, and so within the first 48 hours of the economic collapse of September of 2008, we lost 5 deposits. People that said, I'm going to get a pool, they withdrew it, and they said, we just can't do it because they had lost confidence in the economy. And then over the coming months, things started to get worse and worse. By January of 2009, we were 3 weeks overdrawn in our business bank account. We were in big trouble. And I thought we were going to go out of business. In fact, I talked to a few different consultants. They said, Marcus, you need to file bankruptcy. But if I file bankruptcy in that moment, I lose my home. My 2 business partners lose their home. And so we had to figure out a way to get more traffic, more leads, more sales than we'd ever done without spending the money to do it. That's when I started to read about the internet. That's when I started to see these fancy phrases like inbound, content marketing, social media marketing, digital blogging, all this stuff. But in my mind, Matt, because I'm just, simple pool guy, I said, okay, so what you're telling me is if I just take all the questions I've been asked over the years about fiberglass pools and in-ground pools in general, and I'm willing to address them on my website through text and video, I just might be successful, just might save the company. And so that became our philosophy, They Ask You Answer. And over the coming years, we just continued to do this up until the point where we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. Today we get, during the summertime, we'll get about 600,000-700,000 visitors a month. And to the website, we have now started manufacturing pools as well because we got so much traffic, so much momentum, so much movement that we said we can't install pools outside of Virginia, Maryland. It's crazy, but we got all these people that want to do business with us. How do we do that? And that's why we started manufacturing pools. It's been an amazing ride, Matt, but that's the quick 101 story of River Pools.
Yeah, it really is an incredible story. I'm just curious, Marcus, like before your experience with the River Pool and Spa blog and content marketing, had you done any previous blogging, even if it was for fun or anything like that?
Not really. I was a pretty bad writer at first. But I didn't have a choice, right? We had a financial gun to our head. And I think this is the part, Matt, that a lot of businesses have forgotten. It's almost like as a society, we're saying there's no time for crawling. You have to walk, and you have to walk immediately in your infancy. And that's not fair. And that's not realistic. If you look at every business and all the departments of said business, there's a period of maturity and hopefully an eternal period of progress. And so the goal of content and of integrating content into your sales and marketing process is not perfection. It's always progress. And the people that remember that tend to be much more successful.
Obviously, not all businesses that embrace They Ask You Answer, they're trying to find success in other ways instead if they're not embracing content marketing or what we call inbound marketing today. I don't know, like maybe they're sticking to outdated models or they're trying to take shortcuts. And you describe this alternative as the ostrich marketing strategy. What is the ostrich marketing strategy and why does it not work for online businesses today?
Well, specifically, the ostrich marketing strategy is if the classic myth to the ostrich is that ostriches bury their head in the sand, right? And the reason why they do that is because they think that if they have a problem, they bury their head in the sand long enough, it'll go away. So a lot of businesses are like that too. They approach the issues, the concerns, the doubts, the worries about their products and services, and they bury their head in the sand and they think, oh, if we just ignore them, that'll go away. So an example of that would be this. A lot of companies don't want to talk about price at all. Of course, as you know, there's a lot of discussion about talking about price, and they ask you answer. Some amazing case studies there. Well, a lot of companies say, well, I want to wait till I'm face-to-face with the individual. And so they ignore it on the digital side, the 70% side where the vetting is occurring. And so the sad reality is many don't realize that because they decided to ignore it, they're never going to have a conversation at all with that particular individual because they did nothing to earn their trust. The ostrich does not win. The ostrich does not gain the trust. And so the company that's willing to talk about all the elephants in the room, the good, the bad, and the ugly of their product or service, and in every industry that exists, by the way, it just doesn't, literally it doesn't matter what you sell. There's good, bad, and ugly. If you're willing to address those, you stand out, you become different, and you enable people to self-select. And that's what they want, Matt. You and I, we want to say, okay, I know exactly what I want, and now I'm ready to talk to a salesperson.
But Marcus, isn't that being a little too transparent? You're, airing out your dirty laundry in front of everybody.
Well, I think there's a difference between, coming out and saying, I'm a raging alcoholic, and we've got terrible company culture, versus coming out and saying, which by the way, I'm neither one of those two things. But hypothetically, let's look at some of the they ask you answer elements for a pool guy. Okay, so for years people would ask me questions. Number one question everybody would ask was, how much does a fiberglass pool cost? Right, within the first couple of minutes. Next question would be, so what are the potential problems with a fiberglass pool? No pool guy wanted to address that. None wanted to address that. Nobody wanted to address what's the difference between a concrete and a fiberglass pool. Or are concrete pools better than fiberglass pools, right? Which is a legitimate question. There's all these types of questions. And then, you can get really granular. Like, does the concrete deck around your pool, like the patio around your pool, does that crack? Is that going to crack? Like, these are the types of things that salespeople shy away from. But they are legitimate questions. And what scares buyers is not knowing. Is not the idea that you told them. What scares them is when they can't find an answer. Case in point here. So let's say, Matt, you decided to go to a restaurant tonight on a recommend from a friend. And you're going to take a friend, so you want it to be a good experience. And if you're like 99% of people, before you go to the restaurant that you have not been to before, you're going to make sure, okay, I want to make sure I have a good experience. I'm going to do two things. You're going to read reviews, and you're going to go to their website, and you're going to look at the menu. This is very, very common. It's what most of us do. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you go to the website and there are no prices on the menu, are you still going to go? And this is what we found. Over 80% of people in that moment will not go. And it's not because they couldn't afford it. But the moment you leave the space blank is the moment you create a seed of doubt. And when seeds of doubt exist, people do not buy. They don't buy. Inertia occurs. Let me give you another really silly example. Let's say you have a shopping cart page on your website. Okay. Anybody here that's ever been to a shopping cart page, there's been a time when you were pulling out your credit card, you went to the shopping cart page, and you notice, oh, there's a coupon code option here. And he said, oh, geez, I don't have the coupon code. So in that moment, instead of continuing just to buy the thing, the majority of people will now go look for the coupon code. And here's where it gets crazy, Matt. If you don't find the coupon code, do you still buy? And a large portion of people now won't. And it's not like a minute ago, they were paying for it. Now they've stopped. It's because the coupon code in and of itself plants a seed of doubt. That's why coupon codes oftentimes hurt conversions when it comes to shopping cart pages.
Okay. Yeah. Marcus, one example that is doing this really well that you mentioned earlier is CarMax. And
Yeah.
they've like totally revolutionized the used car industry. And I was wondering if you could help us, glean from what CarMax has taught us.
I think the biggest lesson of CarMax is they had a lot of clarity at the beginning. They said our industry is messed up and nobody trusts us. I mean, how many industries are willing to say that? Most don't say that. You don't generally find lawyers saying, yeah, there's a lot of crappy lawyers and we've kind of, we're reaping what we sow. No, I mean, that's refreshing, by the way, if somebody was to say that, just like you don't have a lot of politicians that think that way. And so CarMax started with the simple premise of nobody trusts us. Is it possible to win the trust back? That was number one. Number two, they analyzed all the fears that buyers had, and they said, is it possible to overcome them individually? Like, what would we have to do to overcome them? And here's the cool thing. Like, when they said no haggle or 5-day money-back guarantee, a lot of people in their space, certainly their competitors, said, you can't do that. You're going to go out of business. What's crazy today is if you go to a CarMax, those same competitors that are located next to them are usually selling by the exact same model of CarMax. Because you have a choice. You can either make the rules in your space, like Zappos or like CarMax did or like a Riverpools did or whatever it is. Big, small, doesn't matter. You can make the rules and everybody says, oh, okay, those are, or you can follow the rules that have been made by your competitors. But trust me, it's much better to make them than to follow them. It makes me laugh. I've seen car automotive dealerships say, oh, yeah, we give you a 7-day money-back guarantee on all of our vehicles, not just 5. Like, who cares? You didn't make the rule. So it doesn't matter if you gave a better offer. CarMax changed the world of cars as we know it. And so therefore, you've already lost. Go ahead and make it 7, make it 10 days. It doesn't matter. You screwed up because you weren't obsessed with the way buyers wanted to buy.
Exactly. And I'm just curious, over the last few years, have you seen any of your competitors in the swimming pool business adopt They Ask, You Answer?
Oh, dude. Do you know what, Matt? Before I started, professional speaking, and I guess for the last 5-6 years, I've been traveling around the world, sharing this message of They Ask, You Answer. But before I did that, I first started speaking to the swimming pool industry at the National Pool Spa Show, all right? And so I once figured out, I did that for like 3 years. I once figured that I had taught this to over 1,000 swimming pool companies. Like everything we did at River Pools to not just save the company, but become what we were. And I can tell you that of the 1,000 plus that I've taught this to, some of which were competitors down the street, maybe 1 or 2 have done it 50% as well as we did at River Pools. And that's because it's the ultimate case of you can take a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And that's the age in which we are. There's so many people that realize, of course, this is what we should be doing, but they don't do it. And so therefore, they'd rather just go throw money at the problem and not invest in it like the farmer and plant the seed and nurse the crop and do what's necessary for long-term success.
So you're saying only 1 or 2 actually even did it? Have done it?
Yeah, like that have done it kind of well.
Kind of well, right. Wow, that is just amazing.
Crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. Let's now talk about, in your book, you talk about the Big 5. And these are 5 different content forms. After implementing your new inbound marketing strategy for a couple of months with Riverpool and Spa, you did a deep dive into your analytics to see what was working and what wasn't working and which forms of content were getting the most traction. And you describe what you discovered as profound. And basically, there were 5 content subjects that get the most response that lead to sales. They are 1, pricing and cost, problems. 2 is problems. 3 is versus and comparisons. 4 is reviews. And 5 is best in class. Now, your book devotes multiple chapters to each of those. And We won't go into all of them today. I do recommend this book if you're wanting to learn how to use your blog to generate sales with content marketing. And there is a link to Marcus's book in the show notes. So, of these 5 topics you discovered, which one would you say proves to be the most consistent at turning website visitors into customers?
It's not even close. It's money. It's always money. It's always price. It's always cost. The big 5 are the 5 subjects that essentially dictate our economy when we're buying things. And so if anybody's listening to this, if you recently had to make a major purchasing decision, you probably did these 5 things. You may not have even realized it. And you mentioned those, each one of them, Matt. But cost is a huge one. Now here's the funny thing about costs, all right? If I ask a group of people, if I say, have you researched how much something costs online in the last year? Everybody's going to say yes. And then if I say, okay, so if you're on a website and you can't find anything about cost and price, like it's not there, what's the emotion you experience? Immediately, everybody in the room says, I'm frustrated, right? So the question is why you're frustrated. And it's like, I'm the buyer. I want to be able to make a decision. And here's where it gets interesting. In this moment of frustration, if you say to somebody, okay, so do you just keep digging on the website? And they laugh like, no, I don't keep digging. In fact, we find people will spend less than 10 seconds on the site if they're looking for price and they can't find it. Second factor is if you say to them, okay, so do you say, that's all right, they're not talking about cost and price. They're a value-based company. I'll call them instead. It's laughable because for the most part, we stopped calling companies on the phone during this vetting period. So instead of calling them or digging further on the site, what we do is we continue to search until we find an answer. And generally speaking, whoever gives us the answer that we're looking for, they get our business. Right? And if we get to the core psychology, the real reason we get upset as buyers is because we know when we ask this question, how much is it, that they know as the business the answer. And because we know they know the answer and they're not giving it to us, we now feel like they're hiding something from us. And when we feel like anybody is hiding anything from us online, trust is gone, right? So that's the essence of that. So we all agree on that. But then if you ask a group of people, well, how many of you talk about cost and price on your website, assuming they're not an e-commerce company, usually only 10 to 20% of the businesses will raise their hand. So the question is why? And there's always 3 reasons. The reason why there's always 3 reasons, Matt, is because all businesses are the same. All businesses same. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter what you do. Business, B2B, B2C, service product, big, small, local, national. Here's the 3 reasons. First reason why we don't do it is we say, well, I tend to be more expensive and I don't want to scare my customers away. Which is kind of funny if you think about it because they're not your customers yet. But what really scares us away is not having the pricing. We've already established that. So it's not the idea of having it. It's the idea of not having it. That's number 1. Number 2 reason why they say they can't do it is because of the competition. They don't want the competitors to see their pricing. Now, here's what's funny about that. I train sales teams all the time. If I go to a sales team and I say, do you have a very good sense as to what your competitors charge? They say, yes, of course we do. So if we have a good sense as to what our competitors charge, that also means they have a good sense as to what we charge. So it's the big secret, non-secret. You know, everybody acts like nobody knows what everybody's charging, when in reality, everybody knows what everybody else is charging, right? So that's number 2. Third reason why we say we can't do is we say things like, well, Marcus, it's a very customized solution. You know, I'm not selling widgets here. This is not a commodity. This is very specialized. Well, okay. Now look at it like that. That in and of itself would be, well, it depends. And I agree that it depends. But is it possible for you to explain what drives the cost up for a project? What drives it down? Could you explain why some in your industry are cheap, why some are expensive? Could you really help me as the buyer get a sense for the marketplace? And of course, the answer is yes. I don't espouse that people should necessarily put a price list on their website, but it's absolutely your duty to have a lot of information about cost and price on your website if you truly want to move the needle and have sales-based conversations. If you want to increase the quality of your leads, and if you want to be more attractive to the marketplace, you talk about money. It's that simple. And by the way, They Ask You Answer is a huge recruiting tool. And that's why the companies that talk about salary on their website do way better than the ones that don't.
As far as getting good people.
Yes.
Yeah, to hire as well.
Well, you know, for some reason, when people are looking for jobs, they want to know how much it pays, right? I mean,
right.
And For some reason, companies don't like to talk about it until the end of the, quote, sales conversation or the vetting process.
Right.
No, no, no. Got to talk about it sooner because they don't want to waste their time on a $30,000 a year job if they need to make 75. And so they want to self-qualify and then they want to contact the company. Most companies don't do that.
Yeah, that is so fascinating because what you're saying is pricing is the most it's the topic that businesses are the most resistant to discuss online or on their blog, but yet it's the most effective subject to cover in your content.
Yeah, for 90% of our clients, half of which are B2B, the number one traffic lead in sales generating content has to do with cost, money, price.
Wow.
Thing is, you just can't argue the numbers. You cannot argue the numbers. And anybody that says we can't talk about it, I'm like, no, you're lying. You can. You can't. You just have to explain the marketplace. Again, we're not saying put a menu of pricing on your website. It's a different ballgame. Now, granted, if you are a restaurant, you do have to put the full menu on there. That you do.
Right.
But this is where we are. And it goes down the list. I mean, if you look at the other big fives, I used to get asked all the time, what are the problems with fiberglass pools? Man, nobody ever asked that question. Answered that question on their website. And we addressed it. And because of advanced analytics and people searching for the phrase fiberglass pool problems, we've been able to track over $500,000 in revenue from that one singular phrase that people have searched that have bought a pool from us. It's crazy that price article that generated $3.5 million in revenue for the company since the day it was written. It's crazy, man.
It is. It's amazing, and that makes so much sense even on like just a basic relationship level. When you talk about your problem, it usually makes things so much better if you just get it out there in the open and talk about it with the other person, and instead of trying to hide it.
This has been going on for years. Everybody's got elephants. Politicians, when they run for office, the smart ones come right out and say, I smoke dope, instead of somebody else coming out and saying they smoke dope. That's just how it's supposed to go if you don't want to get in trouble, right? If you don't want, a PR nightmare on your hands. So companies, if they're smart, like a fiberglass pool company, if they're smart, they say, if you're looking for a pool that's wider than 16 feet or longer than 40 feet or deeper than 8 feet, well, then fiberglass probably is not a good fit for you because there's certain size limitations, right? So that's part of the conversation. And it's like, okay, great. For the person that wanted a 16 by 32 rectangle that's 5 feet deep, they're like, sweet, I've got something here that looks like it's going to fit me perfectly. But for the person that wanted a 60 by 40, Olympic-sized pool, guess what? Fiberglass ain't a good fit. And, the happiest day in the life of a business isn't when they know who they are. It's when they understand who they're not. Because when you know what you're not, Matt, you have the ability to say no. You don't take on every job. You don't take on every client.
Right.
You don't say, yes, I'm going to do that to every service that you could do, but you don't necessarily want to do. You say no. And that's what makes you very, very successful as an organization. That's what promotes a great culture. And that's what, gets people out of the bed in the morning because they do what they love.
Yeah, this is really good stuff. When it comes to the big five and creating content, do you recommend creating an equal amount of those five, like 20% each, or how do you distribute that?
I don't have a recommendation there. I find that the key is that you take the questions as they come to you. So, for example, if you sell 10 major services, well, then you're probably going to have 10 major pricing pages on your website that's really talking about those services individually. Because you don't want to just clump things together. You want to address things as specifically as possible. I mean, if you look at what the buyer wants, they want specific answers to their specific questions. If you look at what search engines like Google want, is they want specific answers to their specific questions. Everybody's aligned at this point. So this is how we have to think. But the key is that you start there. And here's what's interesting, the other thing about the Big Five. The Big Five, if we look at the traditional sales funnel, you got top of funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. The Big Five start at the bottom of the funnel. And this is where your content should start as a company. This is where your messaging should start as a company. Most companies, the flaw that they have, and the reason why you hear things like, it takes forever for content marketing to work, is because they start producing fluffy content that buyers may or may not be interested in. Like 5 fun games to play in your swimming pool. Like, who cares? That person is probably not looking at a fiberglass swimming pool. They probably already own one. Or maybe they're having a party at the YMCA this Saturday for the kid. I don't know, but they're probably not interested in buying a fiberglass pool. But if somebody types in Google, how much does a fiberglass pool cost, you better believe they're a serious buyer because they're looking at a specific type of pool. They want to know how much it's going to cost them. That denotes they're lower in the funnel in that vetting process in terms of before they contact the company. And my goal is that before somebody contacts us, I want them to have every major question already answered, that they know our doctrine, our philosophy, that they've seen our face, that they've heard our voice. And if that happens, we're going to have an amazing sales experience.
So what you just said about fluffy content brings to my mind a question that I just thought of that I'm curious what you would say in response is when it comes to creativity in your content, or, using humor and things like that. Is that something you shouldn't even think about, or?
Well, I've seen a lot of traffic leads and sales killed by journalistic writing, journalistic headlines.
Okay.
Let me give you an example I'm talking about. I mean, until Google doesn't exist, you need to make sure that you please the searcher and the search engine, unless you already have this huge platform. In other words, if you're the Huffington Post or the Onion and you have this huge platform and you have these really, witty headlines for articles, that's one thing because that grabs you and brings you in. But if you're a normal SMB, small to medium-sized business without a huge platform, huge brand, you're just trying to generate more traffic, more leads, more sales, you need to be straightforward and honest. In other words, you need to say the title of the article would be, or the video would be, how much does a fiberglass pool cost? You don't want to say things like the 5 things about fiberglass pools you don't know. Like nobody's ever searched that ever. Right. So if they're not searching it, that doesn't align with the ask you answer. Again, if you're Huffington Post, go ahead and write it. It's interesting. It's catchy, it's witty. But searchers and search engines, for the most part, I'm not talking about email subject lines. That's different. I'm talking about searchers and search engines. They do not appreciate sarcasm, wit, jokes, etc. It's not their thing.
And you also extend that into the body copy or the video content?
I think it's great to have personality, no question. The body copy, I say, be you as much as possible, yes. But when it comes to some of the essentials of just clean SEO, which obviously is addressed some in the book, you don't want to dork around with your titles. You know what I mean? You do want to do those. You want to do those well. You want to be thoughtful about them. And usually, here's the thing I have found, Matt, if you want to be both, if you want to be a creative, catchy title, and you also want it to be searcher and search engine friendly, you can do both.
Okay.
It's very, very possible.
I
mean, and so I just mentioned the 5 things about fiberglass pools you didn't know. Well, how about I say fiberglass pools problems, 5 things you didn't know that you probably should. Now, that's a really good title because it is written the way somebody would search it, fiberglass pools problems, but it's also very, very catchy, like, okay, I'm going to click on this bad boy. So usually there is a win-win that you can achieve there.
Absolutely. So Marcus, you're also a business consultant, and I'm curious when people, business owners, raise up, resistance to implementing like these 5 content forms, problems, costs. How do you respond to their excuses or their fears?
Well, usually, frankly, what we do is we teach a lot of workshops where we bring everybody together, especially the sales team. Because if you tell the sales team you're going to start talking about money, they're going to freak out because they don't get it. They don't get it. I usually spend about 3 hours with organizations, and by the end, the owner's saying, we need to be doing this tomorrow, like tonight, right? But if I come right into an organization and say, how come you dummies aren't talking about cost and price on your website? All they're going to do is get offended. So it needs to be a process of showing them how we've changed as buyers, right? And so that's one of the major elements. But at the same time, Matt, there's plenty of companies that aren't going to do this because they're going to want to continue to live in 1995, and that's okay. That's why there's overachievers. That's why there's leaders, and that's why there's followers, and that's the way the world works. And so there's always going to be a group of companies that resist doing it the next way, the
Mm-hmm.
way that the buyer would want it. What was once a good habit or a good trait now becomes a negative. Case in point, the most famous one in the world is Henry Ford's quote, right? You can have any color you want as long as it's black. People celebrate that quote. I think that quote's stupid. And I'll tell you why it's stupid. Because Henry Ford revolutionized an industry because he made it easier to build vehicles, more cost effective, but then he almost lost Ford because of the fact that he didn't want to change. He didn't want to answer the buyer. And their question was, you know what? I don't just want black.
Mm-hmm. How important is branding to you when it comes to content creation?
I think branding is a byproduct of work. Culture is a byproduct of work. And so you often hear companies, they say, this is our culture and this is our brand. But they haven't done any work yet to really represent that thing. So let me give you an example what I'm talking about. When you really embrace content marketing well, and they ask you answer well, it means you've got to leverage your sales team, your subject matter experts to produce content, okay? So they get involved now in marketing. And so marketing and sales starts to become aligned. Now all of a sudden, this impacts your culture. Now all of a sudden, they see themselves as a teacher first, as a salesperson second. They start to see the benefits of this transparent, honest teach model that we espouse so much. But it doesn't happen before that moment. You've got to see the fruit of the labor, right? It's just kind of like you can't see where the trail goes until you start to walk the trail. It's not realistic. And so branding is nice. Branding's nice. But especially when it comes to SMBs, man. I mean, if you really want to, if you want to do something, you want to stand out, like you think about Seth Godin's Purple Cow, right? You don't have to invent something that is outrageously different. You can just be more honest and more transparent than anybody in your space. That's the essence of innovation. That's the essence of the brand, right? They're the most trusted brand in the marketplace, okay? What makes them trusted? It's to go at all these questions, and they don't hesitate to address them. And you know that if you go there, you're going to get exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's good. Now, in your book, you talk about video content, and you're pretty enthusiastic about video, and you believe it is more effective than textual-based blog content, from what I read in your book. And let me ask you, what's your response when you hear people say that content consumers prefer text-based posts because video takes too much of their time? That reading.
Go
ahead.
It's like, yeah. I mean, I saw this article the other day. This NBA player, he fundamentally believed that the world is flat, and he really, really believed it. Like he still believes it.
Right.
He's a famous basketball player, right? Saying that video is not the future is like saying the world is flat. And specifically when I say video, I'm talking about visual and virtual based content. Everything that starts with a V, pretty much. The future is found in the visual side of telling the story and answering the question. That's just where we're headed. And in fact, there's all these stats. I think the most prominent stat is by 2019, they say 80% of the content consumed online is going to be video. I mean, that's ridiculous, man. So if 80% of the content consumed online is video, and 10 to 20% of the content you produce is video, is there a problem here? Like when we engage a company, Matt, we try to make it so that within the first 6 months, they get to a point that 50% of their content is video-based content. And we try to just get more and more as we go. But when you do video, it builds an amazing culture, man. I mean, it does all these cool things. Again, all these fiduciary benefits that come out of this video culture within an organization.
Okay, Marcus. Well, let's suppose someone reads your book and then follows through and implements everything you recommend. Now, realistically, how long will it take for them to see a noticeable improvement in their online sales?
Well, the cool thing about the book is that I addressed it from the marketing side first, from the sales side second, and then implementing what you read third, right? That's the order of the book. And so if you do the ask you answer right, it can have an impact tomorrow. Let me give you an example. We always say when somebody's looking to do video, what type of video should they produce first? Well, the first video that you should produce is what we call the 80% video. The 80% video aligns itself with the questions you hear in a first sales appointment. So in other words, if anybody's listening to this and you're in sales, you know that on average, 80% of the questions you get on a first sales appointment regarding a particular product or service are the same questions every time. They're the same questions every time. And so the first video you produce as a company should be a video that addresses those 80%. Now, what would happen if every sales appointment you had, they had already, before you got there, viewed a video that addressed those 80% of questions? But it wasn't just any video, it was your video. It was from your mouth. They saw you, they heard you, they learned from you, they knew your name now, and now you came and you met them for the first time. How is that sales appointment different? And that's how, Matt, this can affect you tomorrow. Now, over time, though, the planter, the farmer, right, the watering of the field, that occurs with the SEO side of things, the building momentum in social. All that occurs by producing good, sound content that people really want to know from their questions, fears, issues, worries, and concerns, right? That's going to take a little bit more time. But even still, you're going to see people that do this, and immediately within a couple of months, they start to get significant impact. But usually within a year, you're at major impact.
Within 1 year?
Within 1 year, you're at major impact. Yes.
Awesome. Just imagine where you could be 12 months from now, right?
Yeah. You just got to say, okay, so who I am. We're teachers now. We're going to become the Wikipedia of our space. That's what we're going to be. That's what we're going to do. Nothing's going to stop us. We're going to do it more honestly, transparently, persistently, consistently than anybody else.
Now, the internet is considered still pretty young, and yet, we have already seen a lot of online fads come and go in the online marketing and blogging space. Things like keyword stuffing, covert, aggressive link building strategies, blogging on social media instead of your own website. All sorts of fads have come and gone. What about content marketing, or they ask you answer? Is your philosophy just a fad that will eventually disappear?
Yeah, such a relevant question. And I think when people say, is content marketing even going to exist in 20 years, they don't really know what content marketing is. I define content marketing as your company's ability to be the best and most helpful teachers in the world at what you do, online and off. And so if I came to a CEO and I said to that CEO, do you think great teaching, communication with your customers is going to be relevant to your business in 20 years? What would they say? And they'd say, of course it is. If I said to a CEO, do you think that it's critical your customers see you as the most trusted voice in your space in 20 years? You're going to say, yes, critical to my business. If I say, do you want them to say they will solve my problems? I just know they will because they always do in 20 years. Yes. Now, that's a principle though, Matt, right? And they ask you to answer as a principle that it's been around forever. I didn't make it up. I just used 4 words to break it down simply, right? But it's been around forever. It's going to continue to be around for a long, long time. It's nothing new. And what I know is that principles are here to stay, but platforms come and go. And techniques come and go, but principles last. I've been teaching They Ask You Answer now for 6 years. Every single Google update, every single algorithmic update, our clients are doing better than they were before, not worse. And that's because they did it the right way. They do it how humans would want it to be done. They said, let's produce great quality content.
Marcus, if people want to learn more about your They Ask You Answer business approach to online sales, where can they get a copy of your book?
Best places, Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Just go there, type in They Ask You Answer. Anybody can email me. My email is marcus@thesaleslion.com. You can find me on Twitter @thesaleslion. And of course, if you get the book, if you're listening to this, I hope you leave a review as well. But Matt, man, it's been great talking to you. I really, really appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Didn't I see that you could also go to theyaskyyouanswer.com?
You can go there as well. There's plenty of places that you can go.
All right.
You will not have a problem finding the book.
And Marcus, where can people follow you on social media?
Best place is either Twitter, at the Sales Lion. You can find me on Facebook as well. Just type my name in there. Hit me up. Say, hey, I heard you on Matt's podcast, and I'll accept your friend request. But those are probably two best places there, Matt.
Marcus, thank you so much for coming on the Blog Chronicles today. It's been a blast, and I've been admiring you for several years now, and it's always great to get wisdom from people like you that are out there doing, not just talking, but actually doing it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Blog Chronicles. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe on YouTube or iTunes and leave a rating or review to help other bloggers find us. If you want to chat, look me up on Twitter @Matt Loomis. So who is going to be my next guest on the Blog Chronicles? She is the founder of an 8-year-old thriving blog, a website dedicated to helping others live positively in the present moment by providing readers with fresh ideas and innovative advice for making the most of each and every day. She's the author of several books and has been featured on sites such as The Happiness Project, Forbes, Glamour, The Huffington Post, and The Washington Post Express. I'll see you here next time on the Blog Chronicles.